Thank you everyone for joining into the Zoom call today. I am Chloe McGlynn. I am a senior at Duke, about to graduate, and I have been a part of Inside Joke sketch comedy for my entire career and been president this last year. Excited to be moderating this conversation with Teig. Teig, you wanna introduce yourself?
Hello, yes, I'm Teig. I'm a senior at Duke right now, and I'm a member of DUI. And like Chloe, I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. So,
arts 2 years ago.
thanks for coming together for the third episode of the new D-Man Live series. We're grateful to have you all join us for this hour and hope everyone is safe and well. Please note that we are recording this Zoom session live to post on the D-Man Lounge later.
Yes, and we just wanted to say a quick special thank you to Duke in LA, Duke in New York, Duke Arts, Inside Joke, DUI for collaborating on this call. And we've received lots of questions from students and alumni, so we're not going to be taking any questions during the live call today, so just keep that in mind. But if you do have questions, feel free to post them into the chat box, and then if people have answers, they can answer them.
And we'll be posting the panelists' emails in the chat, so you may follow up with them directly. But to start, we're going to go around and ask the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll dive into your questions. And we want to ask that the panelists be brief in their answers so that we can get to everyone. Thank you. So if you want to start by introducing yourselves, Adam, do you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Adam Chodikoff. I am a senior producer at The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. I have been at The Daily Show since the very beginning, since day one, June 3rd, 96. Very happy to be here. Very quickly, I just finished reading Bad Blood, the Elizabeth Holmes Theranos book. Surprising amount of Duke alumni involved in that whole thing. So I hope this tonight gives a better, look at Duke alumni than being involved in the biggest fraud of the century.
All right, Paul, would you like to go next?
Sure, my name is Paul W. Downs. I'm an actor, writer, and producer, and I live in LA. Do you want credits? You guys want credits or no?
Yeah, sure.
I work on things like Broad City and the film Rough Night and Time Traveling Bong. It's 420. It's streaming for free today and all week on Comedy Central's YouTube. You guys are looking for something to do later tonight.
Heck yes, happy 420. Dillon, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Dillon Fernando, and I am a fact checker at Full Frontal with Samantha Bee.
Sofia, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'm Sofia Manfredi. I'm a writer for Patriot Act, and before that, I wrote Frontal, and I'm in New York.
Very cool. Ishan, you're up.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Ishan. I'm an associate producer at Full Frontal with Sam Bee, and I live in New York also.
Andrew?
Sorry, I'm Andrew Tunnard. I'm a senior counsel at NBC Entertainment, and that includes being the day-to-day lawyer on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon.
Oh, so cool. Laura, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hey, I'm Laura. I'm a segment producer on Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. And prior to that, I was at Saturday Night Live for 6 seasons doing like Weekend Update and some of the film unit stuff.
So cool. And last but not least, Seth.
Hi, I am one of the senior writers at Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj. Before that, Seth Weitberg is my name. I'm also in Brooklyn. And let's see, before that, I was a writer on The Opposition with Jordan Klepper. And then before that, bounced around a bunch of different shows and was also the co-executive producer for the first 3 seasons of Drunk History on Comedy Central.
Whoa, that's awesome. Oh, is that everyone? Awesome, we did it. Great. Feel free. We're gonna go ahead and jump into questions now. And like Chloe said, these are gonna be directed sort of at specific people, but if you have answers, like feel free to jump in. So the first thing we just wanna ask, Paul and Laura, what does your job look like now as you work from home? And do you have any tips for graduating seniors or alumni who are looking to break into the industry? Like how could they be using this time?
Laura, you want to go first?
Sure. Working from home is odd. I think you have to be forgiving of yourself a little bit. It's a lot of self-discipline, and the good thing about that is it's kind of transferable to like being a senior in college, I would think, where you're kind of responsible for taking the reins yourself. For me, it's very odd not to have human interaction, and a lot of my job is kind of screening things that happen on TV through the production funnel that happens, which doesn't go very well over Zoom sometimes or GChat, but it's odd. I miss the human connection, but we're surviving, and I'm really grateful to have a job. And I think my advice to seniors now who are trying to do stuff or trying to get into this is just like, be super patient with yourself. Like I would tell you that even without a pandemic, but like with a pandemic, be 10 times as patient with yourself and with the industry. Don't worry about landing like a dream job right away, because you have to be realistic with what's out there. And I always just say, like, make stuff yourself no matter what. Always be having, like, make a side project for free on your iPhone. You can make funny stuff on TikTok. Like that's kind of what I always think somebody should do. Paul?
I agree. I think it's such a weird and unsettling time right now, but it is a true privilege to be able to continue to write from home, because you can write anywhere. We are about to start a writer's room, which over Zoom might be really strange. It is, without human connection and being in the room to pitch with people, might be really odd, but we feel lucky to be able to do it. And I think my advice would be similar. It would be, if you're home, try your best to make things. Just write something. If you want to be a writer, write a spec pilot or a spec feature. If you want to be a performer, write something that you can perform. I think it is hard to focus with so much news coming at you all the time, and so much that's unknown about what the future will hold. But I think if you can get something done every day, that's great. We have been doing one scene a day, which I'm like, that's huge. It's really, really good. So I think if you can set a small goal for yourself and try to focus and do that, using this time to be productive will be hugely valuable.
Thank you. No, that's super valuable. And I think that translates really well into our next question, which is kind of directed toward Sofia and Ishan. What are your suggestions for how students and alumni can navigate their internship and job search during these times? And you guys spoke to that a little bit, but more specifically, how can students and alumni find a balance between staying in touch with alumni about career opportunities during this time, and also respecting that people might be facing different challenges right now?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think just like, I think awareness, right, that the industry is not what it normally would be, which I think, like, I'm sure every Duke student has, and like everybody has. And I think maybe looking to people that you would reach out to find out about opportunities or about something like a little bit more concrete, maybe view those more as like general advice emails or calls, or just like, I don't know. I think reaching out to people and kind of putting your name in their head and, asking questions and communicating with them is great. And when things do start up again, then, maybe there's a time to kind of like, depending when that is, I would hate to like even guess right now. I think then that's like maybe a time to like follow up with somebody, or just like remind them that, you had spoken before. But I think kind of just like being aware that maybe now is a time to like gather all the information that will like help you take action when it is like possible to. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense, but it feels like everybody on both ends of it is kind of stuck in the like, I'm going to prepare for what I think will be helpful. And I think the most that you can kind of get from somebody is probably just like honest conversation and advice, and maybe like a pair of helpful eyes. And I'm sure just if you, are like I don't know, just like send a, you know, polite email and don't like do anything too crazy. People will probably, they might send a delayed response or like a, you know, I think people would be as happy to help as they like normally would be.
Yeah, I'd echo that too and say like to be cognizant of which particular jobs are also like more affected right now. So like I work on the field producing side of the show. So a lot of our cinematographers, lighting people, set PAs have been like particularly affected and out of work because there's like no on-set jobs. So just being mindful of like when you do reach out to someone like that, you know, their situation might be a little more precarious as well. And then also in terms of like, you know, how to navigate an internship and job search, like there's a lot of sort of like professional groups you can kind of join when you move to like a New York or LA or DC. So like one group that's like really helped me a lot is called Video Consortium. And I think they have chapters like all around the world now. But they post like kind of video jobs and openings. A lot of it's geared towards documentary, but I think they also like work in the scripted world as well. And that's been good. They've been posting a lot of like opportunities for filmmakers, you know, people who do stuff independently, COVID relief funds if you're a freelancer and stuff. So they've been sort of like, I found their resources to be like super helpful for my friends also who were kind of out of work. And I can post that in the chat.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, so our next question is going to be directed towards Adam and Andrew. And so sort of like in your roles as producers and as legal counsel, what does it look like when you're interacting with staff every day over video chat and that sort of thing? And like, has the current situation affected the way that you're booking guests and conducting interviews and that sort of stuff? And anyone from Full Frontal and Patriot Act, feel free to jump in on that one as well.
Should I go or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I don't do. This is my first ever like Zoom chat. I communicate via email. You know, it's with the head writers at 10 p.m. around every night. The head writer will send out a mass email to the writers and the researchers and the producers. Here's the stuff we're considering doing in the show tomorrow, and then I check on Scripto, our script program, in the morning around 10 a.m. There's a script, what we call a no joke script, in which they're all setups for jokes, and I check to see if we have any, you know, false premises or are there any errors in the setups, and then the writers get assigned to write jokes to the setups, and then later in the day I'll get a notice. All right, here's the rough scripts. And then I'll really go into fact checking and research mode and go through line by line, point by point, and just send emails. I mean, there's no need for me to do a video chat, or they can just call me on the phone. Like, remember calling people on the phone, you know? So, and when I write questions for the guests, like today, I was writing questions for Governor Murphy. We had in the show of New Jersey, and I don't book the guest, but the guest producer will say, here's Senator Murphy, we've got him on, you know, and then I'll just start typing up questions, email it to her, and then Trevor will look at it during the day, and he might do it, he might not. But so the main, you know, difference is just a lot more emailing, back and forth, and communicating via email. And I'm just, you know, so.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, when I started as the Tonight Show lawyer, as the new lawyer, everyone kind of was a little wary of me. The writers and the producers sort of wanted to come to me through someone else because they just assume the lawyer's going to, you know, raise a red flag, sound the alarm bell, whatever. And it took some time, but, you know, having the relationships I do with our producers and our writers and our, you know, segment directors, it got to the point where before we left the office, I was interacting face to face with them a lot of the week, and at the very least on the phone most of the day. And I think it took us a couple weeks to kind of get in a groove. Once we all left 30 Rock and went into quarantine, because the Tonight Show themselves are all sort of, you know, in the 2 floors of 30 Rock, and they can walk down the hall and ask people questions, and so many people, they don't even need to come to me for stuff. But now I'm actually finding that I'm having way more conversations with people who can't just yell down the hallway or to the cube next to them
Sure.
for answers to things. And, you know, there are people at the Tonight Show who've been there when it was Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, who were at SNL before that with Jimmy, I mean, who've been with Jimmy for, 15 years. And without that access, everything, it takes a little more time. And because we're operating on such a frenetic pace, we need answers quickly. And often I'm sort of at the receiving end of a lot of questions, which it's been difficult to navigate, but for me is great because I really do love the sort of the human interaction component, even if it is over Zoom. So it was a challenge, I think, for the first couple of weeks. And I think now we're in a groove. Things aren't as frantic, but still very, very busy, and a lot of phone calls and emails all day.
Awesome. Did Laura, Dillon, or Ishan want to jump in on that at all? Or
sure, we can. I think the way that we interact, I like our system a lot. We kind of all do this chaotic Slack meeting on a Thursday, and we decide what we want to do on the show that Wednesday. And I think it's really, everyone's like throwing in their 2 cents for what we want to do on the show. And I think people are very receptive to that. And that's one thing I like about the way we're doing the show right now is I think everyone kind of feels like we want to document the times of this moment. And so like whatever everyone's passionate about, like we're going to try to make a segment or like do something that kind of reflects that, which I really like. We do a lot of slacking. We do a lot of like Gmail, like kind of Zoom situations. Honestly, most of my job is slacking people, so I don't really see too much of a difference. But yeah, I think we're still like on calls with the writers, and we're still making sure we're live fact checking stuff as they do rewrites. And I think it's business as usual, but just in a different place.
Yeah, it's been I work on the field side of things, so we've been when we've been pulling segments together, it's been really weird because a video editor will share their screen over Zoom while they're like cutting a segment, and then a producer and I will be like offering notes on a cut, and then everyone's video freezes, and then it's been like really kind of strange and a little bit frustrating. And doing interviews over Zoom is also producing them over Zoom is kind of weird because you're kind of like offering direction, and everyone's a little uncomfortable and stuff. But so that's sort of like completely changed, I think, like how our team does like any sort of interviewing. But what has been nice is that access seems to be a little bit easier. So like we interviewed Elizabeth Warren last week, and that was like, it felt like impossible to get. We've been trying for months to interview her. Obviously she was running for president at some point, and then when I'm sure her schedule was much freer when she dropped out, but it seemed like a much easier ask over Zoom for like 30 minutes and stuff. So it seems like some avenues open up that way, which has been kind of cool.
Yeah, I think you guys covered it. I will just say, for anyone who doesn't know what Slack is, which I didn't know until last year, because at SNL we only used truly like hardline phones, which is insane. But Slack is like an instant message thing, which now is my entire life. So I feel like I should make that clear to people who might not know, like me.
Yeah, thank you so much, you guys, for that. So the next question is about, and we kind of addressed this a little bit earlier, but getting your foot in the door to work in your industry is already challenging. So what advice do you have for students and alums trying to break into the industry at this time? We talked about doing creative work on your own, but do you recommend that students look for and find kind of non-paid volunteer opportunities, maybe something they can do remotely, especially now when so many internships are canceled? I think people are looking to what can they possibly do with this time. And if you guys, Seth and Dillon specifically, if you have any experiences with working with other interns or talking to students about opportunities, how might you answer that question?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think as far as unpaid opportunities go, I've always been of the mindset that you should try to, that if you have the opportunity to take any job on any TV show and you want to work in television, you should take that job. There's so many people that want to do these jobs, and it's so hard to get your foot in the door that it should not matter if it's in the department you want. It shouldn't matter if it's, in the genre you want, like just start working in TV and getting a foot in the door somewhere is super, super helpful. You know, I'm one of the senior writers on the show. Our other senior writer started as the writer's assistant. It is so much easier to promote people from within because they're there every day. They know the show, they know how things operate. And that literally goes all the way down to the PA level. Like on our show, people that start out as PAs end up becoming transcribers or assistants. And then it's just so much easier to move up. So I would not in any way scoff at an unpaid job. Honestly, even the entry level paid jobs you're still gonna probably have to figure out some other way to get, to supplement that income anyway. So I'm always of the mindset, just get in any way you can. And I would say for one good thing in late night specifically, for a lot of those really entry level jobs, because they're at giant companies like CBS, Viacom, and NBC Universal, they're like obligated to list a lot of those really, really entry level jobs on their websites. Like there's I don't have it in front of me, but it's like NBCUniversalCareers.com or something like that. So if you look on those, I'm specifically talking about New York, but they probably have jobs in LA too. You can find the kinds of jobs I'm talking about, which is great because for pretty much all other TV jobs, you really have to know someone who can help you get that job. There's not like a website you can go to. There's the UTA list in LA. There's like lists that go around of jobs you can apply to, but it often comes from your professional network. And then the other piece I would say just about the sort of larger idea of breaking in, and this time specifically, is I think there's sort of like two tracks of personal development that would be helpful to think about as you're like trying to, there's never like I broke in like a single moment. It's like you're working constantly all the time, and then eventually something lucky happens and you can take advantage of it. So I think there's like skill development, and then there's like professional development. So the professional development right now is like email the people that you know that work in the industry, read Deadline Hollywood every day, and like understand how, like what's happening in the business, that kind of stuff. But then do not short the skill development side, which is like, if you want to be a writer, especially a late night writer, you should be writing every day, like no matter what, and getting very, very comfortable with the idea of writing things that no one will ever see. I cannot stress to you how breakneck the pace is in late night, and how quickly you need to be able to write, and comfortable you need to be able to write, especially writing jokes fast, and not having any ego about most of them going in a trash bin. This is a perfect time to like really just flex that muscle, to study all the kinds of TV shows that you want to write for, be watching those, breaking them down. If you want to work in late night every day, you can be writing Colbert monologue jokes and jokes for Trevor and jokes for Sam. This is a great time to just like really focus in on that personal skill development stuff too.
Absolutely true. I agree with everything that was said, especially reading the trades, getting, it's a perfect look, they're always listing new shows that are happening in the genesis stages. They need to hire people. They need PAs, get your foot in the door. And yes, I agree. It's easier to, once you get in, promoting from within. I absolutely second everything that was just said. And, and doing well, at school will also pay off as well. If I can tell the quick story, when Joe Miller, the former, now former head, co-executive producer of Full Frontal, she used to be a writer at The Daily Show. And when she got the Full Frontal gig, she asked me to find, for Full Frontal, a version of me, a researcher, fact checker. And I was like Sean Connery in The Untouchables. I decided I'll call, I'll go to the rookie stage. I called Duke. I called Bill Adair at Duke. Who's your best prospects? And they said, this guy Ishan. And I made the connection, and a star is born. So because Ishan did so well at Duke, Bill Adair recommended him to me, to Joe Miller, and that's how Full Frontal came about. Ishan, I hope I'm getting that right.
Yeah, no, that's about it. Maybe not the star is born part, but yeah.
No, but it's true. I mean, it's because you did so well, Bill, recommended you to me, and I recommended you to Joe, and there you go. So it can happen that way.
Yeah, that's such good advice just to be, I mean, I feel like we keep hearing that activate your network. So it's always good to have it reinforced again. We're going to jump to the next question, which is sort of in the same vein. Paul and Seth, like looking back at your career, are there any sort of side hustle jobs that you guys had that like were, you know, standouts or funny in any type of way? And what would you say to people that are maybe a little hesitant to jump into this industry because of the, you know, the work outside of the field that you might have to do?
There you go.
Go for it, Paul.
You know, yeah, I think everyone needs a side hustle in the beginning. Like Seth said, even if it's a paid job, oftentimes entry-level jobs are ones that you need to supplement the income for. Here's I think you can go a couple of different ways. For me, I had an internship that I got through Duke, that then I was hired by my supervisor to work for this entertainment marketing company, which was great because I had a job. But I actually, looking back, I almost wish I had just waited tables and had done something a little bit more flexible and a little bit less desirable. Because in a way, having a job that was a little bit comfortable, I think I had less hunger and drive and desire than some people I know who had jobs waiting tables and were like, I must stop this. You kind of have that, you know, it's sort of like you have this hunger because you really don't want to be doing that thing. And I kind of think that's a good fire to set for yourself. But yeah, I think it's hard not to have a side hustle, especially in the beginning, you know, because it is really hard to break in and to get your first job. But yeah, I think it's everyone's different, you know, in terms of what that is, what their threshold is. But I wish I had done what my fiance did, which was just wait tables, because in a way she wrote so much more and watched so much more and did so much more than I was doing. You know, when I was like using a BlackBerry, it was like, what is this? This is not what I want to do. Get me out of here. But anyway, but I had health insurance, you know, so it was like, I could do this for a long time. Anyway, that's my personal take.
Yeah, you're going to need some kind of job to make money at first. You know, it's really hard to, you know, right away, immediately get a job that's paying you enough. I would say, yeah, for me, I think Paul's right. There's sort of two schools of thought. It's like, do you get something kind of mindless so that you have all of your creative energy, you know, when you get home to be writing and producing things on the weekend, or do you get something that's a little more creatively or, you know, satisfying in some way? When I moved to Chicago to study improv right after school, and my first job was as a first and second grade Montessori school teacher, which was very satisfying to me in a lot of ways, but it was, you know, I'd be out until 1 a.m. doing improv shows and then like failing at running a reading group at 8 a.m. And so, you know, and I loved the job, but I also I eventually got hired at the Second City and had to like quit on a second grade classroom, you know, with like 2 months left in the school year. So not the best situation. I definitely think like you need something super flexible. I think one thing that's nice is the further you get in your career, a lot of those like side hustle kind of jobs are still like in your field. You know, like you can eventually get jobs writing jokes for people or doing other kinds of copywriting or things like that will feel like not a total departure. I also think, and this sort of ties back to the other question about breaking into, it's really helpful to be able to do a ton of different things. And like, if I was just graduated or was about to graduate and had all the time in the world and didn't have a 4-month-old son, I would learn to edit right now. Like I'm not an editor, I'm a writer and producer, but I would learn to like literally run Adobe Premiere and edit stuff, because especially a lot of the early like entry-level jobs are on digital teams at big shows that will expect you to be able to do everything. So shoot it, write it, produce it, cut it. I mean, Paul, you know, has always been able to edit and broke in with a ton of his own stuff with his partner, who, again, because they could do it all themselves. And I think being able to have that skill set is super helpful. I think to the second part of your question about like, is now like a bad time to break in? Like, it's kind of always a bad time to go into entertainment. Like, it's not an easy job. You need to have a ton of grit. If you like really, really wilt in the face of rejection or challenge, like it's not a good job field. It is a really, really hard job field. And you have to be able to persevere, even after you've been working in it a really long time, things come and go very quickly. And I think like everyone in the industry is feeling the stress of what's going on right now. It's not just people trying to get in. So there's a lot of just uncertainty in general. I would say though, like, no, if this is what you want to do, like you need to do it. You need to try to get into this job. You need to work your butt off and try and do it. And I would not worry about the fact that like the entire entertainment landscape is shifting beneath our feet while you're doing it. It's like, you'll have a big challenge at the beginning, and then, you know, things will seem easier moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The next question, I'm super excited about this one, is what books, movies, and resources, comedy and non-comedy, would you recommend Duke students check out during this time for writing inspiration, or just inspiring like, directors or works, or something that's just really entertaining as a way to escape and or continue to develop as an artist? And that this is directed at Adam and Sofia.
I'll do a shameless plug. The Daily Show Oral History does describe the genesis of the show, and it was written by a Duke alum, Chris Smith. So besides that, my all-time favorite showbiz book also about late night comedy is Saturday Night by Doug Hill and Jeff Weingrad, which is about the first 10 years of Saturday Night Live. And it's very in-depth. There's a newer book, The Live from New York, The Oral History. This is a book that came out, I would say, 25 years ago, but it is the level of depth and reporting about the first 10 years of SNL is incredible. And I highly recommend it if you have time, you know, in terms of basic introduction to late night comedy, along with the oral history.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing I would say, maybe this is like less as an creative inspiration, but what Adam and Seth were saying before of just like reading trades and like reading news and knowing what's going on in general is a good resource. I guess as far as like things that, I mean, I think if you want to, I am a writer, and I think if you want to be a writer, it is also great to just like read as many scripts as you can, in addition to like watching shows and trying to figure out the structure as you watch and things like that. And I think it's now when you have like big blocks of time, it might be a good idea to like go to the Blacklist and just like read, or like, you know, find these collections of scripts that like people are excited about every year, and just read a bunch in a row and see like all the different genres and the different ways that people write things and sort of like different idiosyncrasies in their writing. It can be really fun to do that. And it's sometimes, I don't know, I feel like a personal way that I'm trying to stay sane is like splitting things up into like small, discrete daily tasks. And like reading a script a day, I think is just a routine that has been helping me. And I feel like every day it's just like a different, like, oh, here's a horror movie that I'm not that into horror, but like, sure, I'll read this. Why not? Like, let's see what was interesting about this and what the people who know about this genre thought was good enough about this to like, you know, to give it praise or to be excited about it. And I guess just as far as the thing that I'm watching right now, I have never really watched The Simpsons. I have seen episodes in passing on TV. And yeah, so I'm going through just the early seasons right now and having the time of my life, and I cannot recommend enough.
Oh, I envy you. Oh my God.
It's so fun. I get it. Yeah.
Thank you. And I actually want to open that question up to the rest of you panelists to contribute if you have something you're thinking about and you want to share.
I'll throw two out real quick. That Mike Sachs did a bunch of interviews with comedy writers. I think the first one's called Here's the Kicker, and the second one I believe is called Poking a Dead Frog. They're incredible. Just like interviews with literally every amazing, great comedy writer you could ever want to hear from. It's really humbling. It's really inspiring. I would highly recommend checking both of those out.
I think for any creatives, the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert is amazing and a good way to kind of remind yourself how to stay creative and the beauty of creativity. So I would highly recommend that as well.
Anybody else? Any must-see TV out there right now?
In terms of the power of research and fact-checking, there aren't that many movies, but The Post is great, Shattered Glass also. And the all-time, my all-time favorite is Frost Nixon, which shows the power of preparing for a big interview, researching the right questions. The Sam Rockwell character is the closest I'll ever see myself on screen. And when we had Ron Howard on the show, I went backstage and said, finally, I can go, I can bring a date to a movie and see that's me up there, that's probably my favorite in terms of the power of research.
There's this graphic novel called Out on the Wire, and it sort of explores how they make like This American Life and Radiolab and all these like great narrative like radio shows. And I found it really helpful when you think about like structure and stuff for TV shows as well. It sort of like kind of applies to a lot of things, like how you structure an interview and like how you like, what this particular run of jokes or part of a segment should accomplish and stuff. So it's like really, really helpful, and also it's pretty easy read.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for those awesome suggestions. All right, Ishan, you're back up, and this time it's with Dillon. So how have you guys used your experiences at Duke University, being in this environment in your current role? I'm sure research, is a huge part of that. And then what would you suggest to current Duke students, people who aren't graduating, that, they take advantage of while they're still in school?
Yeah, sure. I studied public policy in school and wasn't really, with some focus on journalism later on in documentary, but wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. But I was able to travel a ton on Duke's dime. It was like, I applied to like every random independent study and research grant I could find, just to travel kind of, and to work on a project I was interested in. And I found that super, super helpful later on, because it sort of like expanded the topics I was interested in. And so part of the field team at Full Frontal, we just try to pitch like any story, any random story that we can make a segment out of, that speaks to like a larger theme. So I found like all those international experiences really, really helpful. So just in terms of like worldview and stuff. So yeah, I mean, Duke has a ton of money. So if there's like, I'm not sure like where it's centralized now, but they used to have like a funding page that I would check out like all throughout the semester to see like how I could possibly game this system and try to go somewhere. So I found that super helpful. And then I ended up doing like 2 or 3 independent studies throughout school, which I also found really helpful, because you could get to know a professor a little bit better and they could guide you on a topic you were interested in. So like, as Adam was mentioning, I did an independent study with Bill Adair, which eventually helped me get my job on Full Frontal. And it was all about like new ways to fact check and how you can do like real-time fact checking and stuff. So stuff like that I found like really helpful. And everyone was speaking towards like the power of doing like your own independent projects. And like Amy, I don't know if you still teach that class, the video class where we profile entrepreneurs, but it was all about like, it was like getting into practice of like making your own short documentaries and stuff. And that class helped me so much, because I finally learned how to shoot video, and was terrible at it for many years, but I feel like I finally like reached a stage that's like mildly decent. And it, like doing that you had the outlet to like try and like sort of creatively fail and then like keep trying again. Like one thing I remember from that class is like we interviewed the owner of Bull City Burger like 5 times because we couldn't figure out like how to get the camera working every time we went. This like poor man just sat through like 5 hours of interviews for like literally 1 minute to be posted on a YouTube site viewed by like 80 people, if that. So yeah, it was stuff like that really helped, like kind of that nurturing environment to like try something creative and then fail.
Yeah, I was a biology major, and so I did something completely different from, I guess, the career path I took now. But it really helped. I also did research on viruses during that time and did all that stuff. So it's really helpful now when we are doing like segments about coronavirus and constantly fact checking people saying random stuff and I don't know, sometimes even people on our own team will say some stuff and we just have to be like, rein it in, this is not correct. So I found that even like just doing what you find interesting, like even though you won't find something that directly translates into a job you might have in TV, like it kind of teaches you how to think and how to work and how to kind of, like, at least in fact checking, I found science background really helpful because you're kind of like looking for a question and that you want to answer, and you have to go about it several different ways, whether it's this experiments or something else. But I think that's the same way with, like, if we want to like fact check like a statement, like where do we go, who are the sources, how do we dig in, how do we investigate? I think that's, and even with research, I think that those two things, that's the same mental process that I found really valuable. Also, yeah, as Ishan said, there's a lot of funding sites in Duke. Someone gave me $5,000. I don't remember who, but I did that, and I went to New York and I got an unpaid internship, and I couldn't have done it without that. So if they still do that, I would find out who that is and get that money. And just doing stuff that you find fun and creative. I worked at the Chronicle and did like wrote for the arts section, was the editor for the arts section, and I thought that was really fun. It really exposed me to a lot of different creators and like learning how they think, and that was really kind of what got me interested in this field. And I don't know, yeah, echo a lot of things that Ishan said about just using Duke's money.
Yeah, no, I'm so into that idea. And I'd love to hear how like other people have, you know, if other people have stories, just because I want to hear your funny stories too, like unexpected ways that, you know, Duke, your experience at Duke has added to like your creative career.
So I was also a biology major, so woo, Dillon. And I agree with like how like the scientific process is like helpful, is just sort of as an analytical tool. But it helped me, or at least I was told that it helped me in the sense that when I was like applying for my for like an internship at ClickHole that was just like an open application on the internet, the bulk of what I had done in college was primate research for like 4 years, and there wasn't that much other stuff. And it was apparently just like weird. And for the people who were reading the resumes, they were kind of just like, what the fuck is that? And then it was like interesting enough that I got an interview. So it could be helpful in that it might just like surprise people and have them question why you're applying and then just stick out in that way. But I don't know.
That's how I got my internship, actually, though.
Really?
Because they told me that, yeah, they're like, who is this person? Why would they want to do anything related to TV? And so, yeah. Yeah,
it's useful, I guess, to just for people to be surprised that you're interested in it all. But I also did take a bunch of money from Duke and echo that strategy for sure.
I would also just say, like, I definitely think this is true in late night, but really across the board in writing is like, it's incredibly helpful to be an interested and interesting person and just know stuff. Just be really interested in whatever field and know things about it. You know, I think like practically, like on our show, for example, there's definitely some writers who are incredibly well-versed in like what's going on in international news. And there's other people that are just like local civics junkies. And there's people that are more into science and cybersecurity and those sorts of things. So having that kind of just like interest level helps in a practical sense, but like, no matter what you are studying or invested in at Duke, like those things, you're going to draw on them all the time in your writing. And don't undersell, like, you know, if you're still a student there, like seeking out course subjects, if you can fit them in, that are just like super interesting to you because you want to know more about that stuff and enrich that part of, you know, your own brain.
I totally agree with that. I don't know if, does programs 2 still exist at Duke? So I was a program 2 major, wow. Meaning that I got to design my own. But what I did was I just took classes from the best professors in any discipline that I could find. And I think, to echo what Seth was saying, it kind of gave me a breadth of knowledge and experience that I wouldn't have had if I just studied theater or creative writing or something like that. So I think, yeah, the more you can take advantage of the people that are at Duke, because there are so many incredible professors. One thing that I used to do is I used to just say to a professor, if I really loved them, who on this campus do you wish you could take class from? And then the next semester I would sign up for that class. Because I was a program 2 major, I was kind of able to do it more easily than you might otherwise. But it really did, I think, help give me things to draw and reference in my writing that I use to this day.
being a poli-sci major has obviously helped me at the Daily Show over the decades now. We've dealt with so much legislation, such as the Zadroga bill, the 9/11 first responder bill. So having that, intense, how a bill becomes a law type background, John or Trevor will turn to me for the explanation of policy or the political process, and having that Duke poli-sci background has definitely helped.
Thank you guys. Great answers, and really cool for us to get to hear your experience and see how ours kind of aligns with that, or I don't know. We all are interested and do so many different things, so it's always reassuring to hear that. But this next question is that it's directed at Laura and Seth, but many of you have written your own shows or directed or produced your own work, and we wanted to know what your advice was for students and alumni trying to spearhead their own creative projects right now and in the future.
Laura?
Sure. I think echoing what we were talking about at the beginning, making things on any budget, don't letting budget be something that stops you. And when I was interviewing people, interns or entry-level people at my first job, we never talked about hard skills, because in television, you don't quite need hard skills at the beginning. And correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, fact checking, maybe you do, and things like that, but you can learn a lot on the job. So my interviews were always much more about who that person was and what they had made and what they were creating, than it was about do you know how to work Scripto this. So kind of as we've been saying, make stuff, make what you love, find people you love working with. I think that is huge, and there's no time to do that college or right after college. Find the people that light a fire in you, and those people that when you're working on something, you forget that time exists. That's the feeling you want to go for, and when you find that, that's what you should be doing. We've said utilize Duke's resources. I do a lot of music. I lived in small town studios when I was at Duke, and I paid myself to work on my own music through Duke's dime, which was insane. And I think in making stuff, the last thing I would say is even to this day, I still struggle with this. I always felt if I wasn't working with a big studio budget or something, I would always feel very amateur. And I think trust your taste and trust, trust yourself and hopefully try and find some confidence in yourself and what you're making. Because I think something I ran into when I first got into the industry was not believing that I should be in that room or that I was worthy of being in that room. And I can almost guarantee that everyone on this call is very, is accomplished and smart and perfectly capable. So that's something I wish that I had done and believed in myself and making my own things, so that I would feel more confident in myself first entering the business. So you're all very capable and believe that.
Yeah, I think that's all great advice. I cannot underscore enough the importance of just making things. And for some of you writers who maybe are not interested in producing at all, definitely just writing things is super important. I think on the front end, it's really important to be able to kind of answer the question for yourself, why are you specifically writing this thing or making this thing? Later on in your careers, when you're in rooms and trying to sell things, the question that people always want to know is why are you the person who can do this and no one else can do this? So just understanding that for yourself will just inform the work and help it be more personal to you. I think Laura's point about collaborating is so key, because TV is one of the most, if not the most, collaborative mediums, in general. On our show, we have a writing staff, but then we have a graphics team that's twice that size. We have an investigative journalism team that's 3 times that size. So we're constantly working with other people, aside from just the production folks. So just starting to learn those lessons, Paul and I used to work together at Duke. Can't tell you how many times we shouted at each other and fell on our face and failed at things. I went to Chicago, fell on my face and failed constantly. It's you need to learn those lessons and get better and better at it. And also because, as I'm sure all these folks would attest to, one thing about working in TV is you are spending inordinate amounts of time with other people, and just learning the skills of like being a good person to work with and be around is also really, really important. Like that works well, it works and plays well with others, from kindergarten. It really is like essential, and being someone that people want to be around and work with. So I think that's part of it too. And also just say two other really quick things. One, I think it's sometimes hard when you're starting out to hold yourself to the highest standard with your work. And I would just say like, try not to settle for good. Keep pushing things to make them as great as you possibly can now. And the last thing I wanted to mention was about getting notes from people. Something I like struggled with for a long time was like how to get notes from other people on my writing that was like helpful in any way. And I think that like a lot of times, no matter who it is, there'll be a lot of like, well, this sucks, or this is great. And those things can be helpful. Sometimes people want to pitch you fixes for things, and that, they're pitching you jokes or ideas that can be helpful at times. But like the most helpful thing that I found in showing people my writing is like literally just trying to understand what was confusing, what like stopped you, what didn't make sense to you, what wasn't clear. If someone does pitch you something that's like oh, well, what if you did this instead? Try to ask the follow-up question of like, what are you reacting to in the script that makes you want that? Because like, honestly, in my writing, I get the best notes from my wife, who is not in the industry at all, but is just like a smart person and a good reader. You may or may not get, notes from other people who are in this field or not, but like always being able to get back to that question of like, what isn't working right in the script, as opposed to just getting feedback on what you should do differently. And scene.
Awesome. No, thank you so much. That was such a good answer. And we're actually about to jump into our last question of the night. So this is for Andrew and Adam. What do you guys think the industry is going to look like after all of this? What do you think the long-term changes are going to be? And, is it something you're excited about, maybe nervous?
Well, I like working from home in sweatpants. I know it's like a hacky comedic observation at this point, but I think, I think especially since we do the show, obviously in Midtown Manhattan, it's going to take a while for us to fully come back. It's, it's definitely above my pay grade that level of decisions, but I think obviously the show is going to be more, video chat oriented or email oriented, and it's going to be a while until we actually have to hopefully soon, once we have an audience in the studio. But that's certainly tough, until God knows when. So I think, as far as I can tell, we're going to be doing the show from Trevor's apartment, and as long as this lasts. And it's hard to speculate about future, how this will affect the industry in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I will say though that, Tonight Show, I think when we first all went home, we weren't really sure what this was going to look like for the next few months. And it quickly snapped together into something that I'm pretty impressed with, as someone who really has no creative input into the show at all. Just sort of as an outside observer, but someone who was there when a lot of these decisions were made. It was really impressive how nimble the shows were. And I think that sort of is across the board with all the late night and sort of satire shows. And I think this is, it's ultimately for the better. I think it's stretched a lot of people creatively. It's sort of made a lot of people go back to the well and rethink how things are done. And I also think for a lot of us at home, the late night shows have kind of, taken back the place that maybe they used to have more, in years past, where people sit around and watch them, maybe not at 11:30 or 1:30, but now at, on YouTube during the day. And, our numbers are up, and I think people are sort of taking comfort in things that they remember existing back when things were back to normal. And I think that's sort of, I don't know, it's motivated a lot of us on the show to work harder and to keep producing stuff, not knowing, like Adam said, when things will be back in front of a studio audience, and thinking this may be the new normal, and how do we make this better each day as we work on Zoom and, through all these sort of new methods of production. And I'm excited. I don't know, excited is a word I'd throw around at this time, but I'm encouraged, I guess, by what I've seen, and looking forward to, you know, what the show's going to look like. All these shows are going to look like over the next few months for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'd love to hear what other people are excited about or encouraged by right now within the industry, and like how you see people innovating and like changing up the game. Anyone, feel free to jump in.
I mean, I'll just say briefly, like our show's kind of had fits and starts in getting up and running with a quarantine edition, and we're finally starting to get things in motion. Seeing our executive producers though figure out how to take like a show that has, I think, probably the most intensive graphics, you know, of any live TV show, and figure out how to translate that into a way that's going to be interesting to watch with no audience, you know, and shoot the show basically on a green screen, which is what we're going to do. Don't tell anyone. Has been unbelievably impressive, and you really do see like the skill. I mean, especially of our graphics team, like they have already won Emmys. They are incredible. Seeing them figure out how to take like what they do and are used to doing on a multi-million-dollar set of screens and make it much more, you know, sort of two-dimensional is super inspiring.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, to speak to that, whether it's people who are on the writing side or people who are on the production side, I think another encouraging thing is that it's an area where people have to be problem solvers and be creative. You know, even if it's like, we don't have the budget to shoot in a mansion, how are we going to make that work? I think that is something that the people in the industry are problem solvers and are always looking to be creative. And I'm encouraged by that as we slowly come back and find ways to come back, because every industry is going to have to adjust. I think we are in a unique position and well suited to do that.
And one quick thing I'm encouraged by also, I mean, I have the same graphics team as Seth and I'm like blown away by them. But also just, I feel like I feel like our executive producers and our showrunner are just really trying their hardest on our behalf. And like, they're really going to the mat for us with all the decisions that are a million miles above me. But I feel like for an industry that at least before I was in it, I was worried was cutthroat or sort of callous or all these different things, or has this reputation of being those things, I feel like, at least in my world, people are really looking out for each other. And there is a sense of sort of community and sort of everyone is trying their best to make things work the best that they can. And that there's just been the like environment and the sort of the way that people are with each other right now in general is something that I find encouraging.
Yeah, thank you guys for all of that. This has been a super rich, awesome hour. Can we get a round of applause for our panelists, even though a lot of people are on mute? Thank you so much for all of your insight. And we also want to thank Amy Unell for bringing this all together. We're super grateful for the connections that we get to have and maintain throughout the years. And this has been really exciting for us. So everyone else, please join us tomorrow evening for episode 4 of D-Men Live. We're talking about the music industry at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Remember to complete the form on the D-Men Lounge to receive the Zoom link for tomorrow. For everyone else, that's it. Thank you so much. And stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. I so appreciate you. Stay safe and well.